It started out as a grand experiment. USAA was founded on the unique concept of military brothers looking out for one another. When 25 Army officers met at San Antonio's Gunter Hotel on June 20th, 1922, they decided to pool their money and insure one another's automobiles when no one else would. As one historian described the founding of USAA,
"Well, about all they seem to have had was faith in an idea and faith in each other, brother officers, the people who would make it work." Edward Clare Dunn.
that ideal and that faith in people with shared values and a common bond, grew into an organization whose mission is to help build the financial security of its membership. Today, more than 9 million members strong, some things have changed, but the values and dedication to service never will. The world's best employees, serving the world's most honorable customers, is a mission that remains the strength of USAA. No wonder tens of thousands of employees over the decades have been proud to serve. They are engines of innovation, caretakers of our founders' legacy. They are the caring voice and problem solvers on the other end of the line. And our people have made USAA an organization of firsts. For instance, women had opportunities to succeed at USAA long before that was common around the nation.
In September of 1950, there were 350 employees, 6 of them men. The 6 men were the 3 top executives, a claims attorney, a man in back who bought the supplies, and a janitor. The rest of us ran the company.
And today, we focus on hiring employees who are military veterans. 1 out of 4 new USAA employees is currently serving, has served honorably, or is a current or former military spouse. In addition, USAA is recognized as one of the best places to work in America. Our ongoing quest for innovation changed us from pen and paper correspondence to being a pioneer in large-scale toll-free call centers in the 70s and 80s. We moved from there to the frontiers of the internet with USAA.com and then quickly to mobile application.
I tutor children in the military housing community. I am always moving around, running errands. The primary way I manage my USAA accounts and membership is through the mobile app that I downloaded. I use that several times a day, pay whatever bills that I need to pay, deposit checks, see what transactions are pending.
Beyond technology, we're looking out for our members in other ways too. From financial advice to making sure we're on the scene quickly after natural disasters when our members need us most.
I have my immediate family, and USAA is my extended family. And just as how this event was punctuated with me embracing my entire family, that is precisely what USAA has done for me and my family. They looked at us as people, and they placed themselves in our shoes.
The people of USAA don't just serve our members. They impact the communities in which we live and work. From being one of the largest contributors to United Way, to providing armies of community volunteers, USAA, employees and retirees, through personal contributions of both time and money, the USAA Federal Savings Bank and the USAA Foundation have all helped change our communities in significant and lasting ways. And like our employees, millions of members are loyal to us, tell their friends and neighbors about us, and can't wait to pass the legacy of membership on to future generations. Our membership numbers are flourishing, and our financial strength is growing, so we can fulfill our commitments when our members need us most. After 90 years, the grand experiment is still thriving. Together, our employees, our members, and our communities are keeping the faith, while the future is a bright horizon.
Before joining USAA in 1994, Major General Joe Robles has a decorated to Major General, serving from Vietnam to Iraq, with assignments that include Commanding General of the Army's 1st Infantry Division and Director of the Army Budget. He was known as the blue-collar general for the connection he had with the troops. General Robles served as the CFO of USAA for nearly 13 years before becoming CEO and President in 2007. He has since led USAA to its best performance ever. In 2009, the Christian Science Monitor named General Robles the #1 veteran in business. He was inducted into the Horatio Alger Association of Distinguished Americans. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome General Joe Robles.
How are you all today? Good. Well, thank you so much, Commander Wong. What a privilege to join you here at your 94th National Convention of the American Legion. When I was on active duty in the Army, we had a truism that still rings true today. The Legion is the gold standard for veterans advocacy. As you have just heard, the American Legion and USAA have a lot in common. 2 years ago, our two organizations became officially connected when USAA was named the preferred provider of financial services to Legionnaires. To those of you who are longtime USAA member, and to those of you who have just recently joined, let me first say thank you for your membership and thank you for your service. In recent months, there's been a lot of talk about the 1% and the 99%. But I have a different 1% in mind. It's the same 1% that the American Legion has been standing up for since 1919. I'm talking, of course, about the less than 1% of our citizens who have served their country in the military. I think we'll be hearing a lot more about this 1% in the next few years, as more of our brave servicemen and women return home from dusty battlefields to rejoin civilian life. Over the next decade, as operations in Iraq and Afghanistan draw down, the U.S. military is projected to shrink by an estimated 100,000 troops to an end strength of 1.3 million. As you've no doubt heard, the defense budget is also going under the knife, with a projected reduction of 31% in planned spending over the next 10 years. In the words of my favorite social philosopher, Yogi Berra, it feels like deja vu all over again. In the aftermath following the fall of the Berlin Wall in November of 1989 and the end of the Cold War, I was director of the Army budget in the Pentagon. We were faced with finding ways to slice the defense budget by 34%. There was also a significant reduction in troops from 2.1 million to 1.3 million. We've been there before. Cuts in defense contributed $820 billion to deficit reduction. Back then, the pundits called it the peace dividend, the down payment on the peace dividend. Today, a lot of people are anticipating another big peace dividend as we reduce up to $1 trillion in defense outlays over the next 10 years. Is this true? Can we really expect a peace dividend? Well, if you define the peace dividend as borrowing less to spend less, then yes, history is about to repeat itself. But our leaders have their work cut out for them. They have to consider ways to make the right cuts while preserving our national security and the readiness of the force. As they struggle to find this balance, like I did years ago, I hope they would keep in mind three major imperatives. One, make sure we're prepared to defend against future threats to our national security. Imperative number two, understand that an investment in the military is an investment in America. And three, do everything we can to ease the reintegration of our returning veterans into civilian society. Let me briefly explore each of these imperatives, starting with making sure we're prepared for future threats. We've seen this pattern many times in the past 100 years. Ramp up for war, then ramp down for peace. But the truth is, it always takes a little while to ramp back up to fighting strength. And while we have done it repeatedly over this last century, each time a little more risk is induced in the equation, and we've got to be extremely careful. After the Cold War, many said we wouldn't be fighting conventional wars again, so we didn't need a conventional force. They were wrong. Iraq and Afghanistan have stretched our resources very thinly. Sure, the nature of the enemy has changed, as have the tactics of the enemy, but we don't always know where the next big threat will develop, whether it be in a jungle, whether it be in a desert, or it be on the open plains of a civilized area or urban area. So we have to be very careful as we slash defense outlays and cut troops to make sure we don't cut too deeply and find ourselves vulnerable to the next big threat. A second imperative is to understand that an investment in the military is an investment in America. People sometimes forget that while the primary mission of the military is national security and national defense, there are other key benefits to our society that are presented by the military. One is during natural disasters. As you just articulated and rewarded some of your folks for helping towards the natural disaster cause and participating, the military is always there. They're always at the front edge of the encounter and the disaster, just like it was 7 years ago and one day during Hurricane Katrina, where the first responders were not necessarily FEMA, but the Army and National Guard and other service personnel who acted first, acted decisively to save lives and protect property. That scenario is being played out again in southeast Louisiana as we speak right now. Hurricane Isaac is making a lot of people evacuate their homes, water damage, and all kinds of things going on, and we know that the military will play a front and center role in this disaster. Another important military contribution to American society is the development of citizen leaders. The founding fathers of the military thought of the military as a citizens' army, not necessarily a professional fighting force. The idea is they would serve their country in time of need and then blend back into society. Today, our all-volunteer military is a variation on the theme of a citizens' army, with some making the military a career, but others choosing to return sooner to civilian life and resume their civilian careers, which is fortunate for the rest of us because they bring with them some of the finest leadership and technical skills in our society, and they seed those skills through the halls of business, education, law, medicine, and politics. I'll just digress for a minute. When I was commander of the Big Red One, at that time we had a force structure that looked like this: 2 active duty brigades and 1 what they called the Roundout Brigade. My Roundout Brigade was from the South Carolina National Guard, a great historic outfit. But as we were getting ready to go for a National Training Center deployment, we had to spend a lot of time on home station training. So the commander of the South Carolina Brigade spent a lot of time at Fort Riley, Kansas, where the Big Red One was stationed at that time, going through a lot of training exercises to get ready for the deployment to the National Training Center. He was a lawyer in a big law firm in Columbia, South Carolina. And I could see he was getting a lot of pressure from his bosses about missing so much work. So I had a simple communication for them. You should be paying us, the U.S. military, for training your brigade commander in the art of leadership, in the art of decision-making, and things that he can use in his business, because we spent a lot of time and a lot of energy training him. I think they got the point. The point is that we, the military, do a bang-up job of training people to be leaders in society as well as in the military. As we weigh the kind of cuts and investments we need to make, let's take into account all the additional benefits of the military, which brings me to my third imperative. We need to do everything we can to ease the transition of returning service members back into civilian life. A recent Pew Research Center study highlighted what many of us already knew. Transitioning back into the civilian world isn't always easy, especially after a prolonged conflict. Nearly half of recent vets, 44%, say they had difficulty readjusting to civilian life. And no wonder, it's harder for vets, especially younger vets, to find a civilian job right now. They're also facing financial struggles that are new to them, like paying for their health insurance and finding and locating health insurance. And many are returning from Iraq and Afghanistan with wounds both obvious and not obvious. These were wars in which a higher than average percentage of service members experienced combat. So it should come as no surprise that 45% of recent vets, 45%, have filed for veterans disability. The statistics are pretty staggering for post-9/11 veterans. 20% suffered concussions. Tens of thousands have experienced traumatic brain injuries. Some 1,600 recent vets have had limbs amputated. And according to the Pew study, 49% of post-9/11 combat veterans say they suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD. With all these challenges, it's up to the rest of us to facilitate their transition to civilian life. Companies can do more to hire veterans. At USAA, we make it our goal, as you heard in the tape, that 1 out of every 4 employees we hire is a veteran or a military spouse. And we look at their applications before we look at anybody else's application. After they're hired, companies can accommodate their physical and mental injuries by providing things like flexible schedules, job mentoring, and time off for treatment and counseling. Other public and private initiatives will play critical roles in helping our service members reintegrate back into the civilian world. Initiatives like the Joining Forces Initiative, the Hiring Heroes Act, and of course a program that's near and dear to the American Legion, the American Legion's Economic Commission. As you can see, today's so-called peace dividend is a little more complicated than some might think. Certainly in a time of massive deficits, the military will have to make some real budget adjustments. But I hope our leaders will address the cuts in a way that will not sacrifice the readiness of the country or the incredible contributions of the 1% who have done and will continue to do so much for so many. And finally, as I walk off the stage, I want to thank all of you for what you do for veterans, your strong advocacy, your passionate advocacy. Duty first.